Thanks, Dennis. Welcome, everyone. This is the second annual IEEE Standards Association EDA Symposium on Interoperability. And I'm not going to show slides because you'll get plenty of slides throughout the day. So I will start with just a little bit of background and a warm welcome. So this event is brought to you by the IEEE Standards Association's Industry Connections Program. The Industry Connections Program is very interesting. It allows companies and industry in general to come to the IEEE and explore possibilities of standardization. Under the IEEE umbrella, you get a little bit of protection, but you might not even know if you want to create a standard or not. So Industry Connections is a program that allows a lot of collaboration in an open environment prior to a decision to make a formal standard. This particular event is the transformation of the EDA Interoperability Forum, which was sponsored by Synopsys. Synopsys hosted 24 of these forums between 1996 and 2011, and it's really good that now the scope has expanded to address interoperability across the industry rather than just addressing Synopsys tools. So that's why this event is so much more important. Even though our interoperability forums were awesome, this one's even better because it is industry-wide and sponsored by the IEEE. This is the second year of this symposium on interoperability under the IEEE Standards Association. Last year, the first time we held this, it was a collaboration between Synopsys, Mentor, and TSMC. And this year, it's really great to add Cadence and Intel to this collaboration. And I want to say thanks to Cadence for hosting this, because I know, Stan, it's a lot of work to bring a crowd like this into your home. And I also want to echo the sentiments from Dennis. Thank you for the IEEE organizers and facilitators who make this possible. Today's program is going to address several important interoperability topics, including low power, virtual prototyping, and portable physical design kits and processes. Last year, we had a brainstorming session that was really great. It was effective, it was interactive, it was unusual for any type of a conference that you go to. And so because it was so successful, we're going to do it again this afternoon. Please participate in today's activities and provide your perspectives throughout the day. The value of this event is proportional to your contributions. So again, welcome and enjoy the second EDA Standards Association Symposium on Interoperability.
Thank you, Karen. Next, I'd like to invite Jim Hogan up. I understand, Jim, do you work for Cadence or don't work?
Have I ever left?
That was the question, because I thought you do have a badge that works from time to time here. Occasionally, but really, Jim. But Jim is an independent consultant, has had a wide range of responsibilities in the industry. And I tell you, when some of my best interactions with Jim have been seated around the issues of interoperability. And I know he's been a spokesperson for this stuff and has quite an intriguing presentation today for us on a take of that. And as you can see from the picture you have up here, we're going to delve into something that's going to be a little less technical before we maybe get technical and business oriented. Jim, I'd like to invite you up.
Thanks, Dennis. Hello, everybody. Thank you for coming. And it's interesting that IP is part of this now. That's awesome. You know, interoperable IP with interoperable tools. What a concept. And so I've done this. Oh, I think it's on, Gary. I thought I had it on. It's green. Yeah. Yeah.
There, now we're working. So I've done this opening speech. You know, what's this thing been going on about 25 years? So I've probably done it 10 times, right? And so, yeah, I've done the mathematical why it's a good idea to do interoperability, all the economic discussions and whatnot. Last time I did it on standardization of railroad, and how that came from the Roman, 2 Roman horses, and we still use the same gauge of 66.6 inches in width. And I thought it was fascinating, but it put everybody to sleep. And so, so this year, you know, let's try something new. And it was Shishpal, wherever the heck he is out there. He says, why don't you do it about winemaking, right? And I said, okay, let's see if I can do it. It's kind of a challenge, but let's try. So, winemaking, at least from my point of view, is a craft that is done by pretty much artists, right? But the best wine is always made from the best grapes. And so we're going to talk about that for a second, right? So a little history, not too much. It's interesting, we were just talking about Armenia, which I've been to too, and I got my cognac from the Armenian distillery in Yerevan, like everybody does, which those Armenians, I think they're a partying bunch. Anyway, they started, looks like at least the oldest known winery is in Armenia, right? And there's some pictures inside that cave that show these vats of winemaking. They had cups, they had dancing shoes. It was pretty much a man cave, back and forth, And so I thought that was interesting. Oh, by the way, those relics on the side are there, as Armenian legend goes. The Great Flood happened, and the Ark landed on Mount Ararat. Did I say it right, Rich? Ararat, yeah, okay, thanks. And those are to commemorate the fact that the first grapes were done after the flood right here in this cave. So those are Armenians. Okay, let's look at where grapes grow. Grapes, they kind of grow right in what we call the Mediterranean climate. But you can see there's this band in the northern hemisphere that's a little further south, rather north, and there's a band in the southern hemisphere that's a little further south, right? But there's places where grapes do really well, or you get good grapes. However, you can see here on the west coast, up in Vancouver, the valley that's just outside of Vancouver City, they grow grapes there. And surprisingly, where my first experience growing grapes was in Germany, way far north, which you get some really great white wines out of. So I've been fortunate enough to be gone to most of these places on this map, and I can tell you, there's one thing in common. There isn't a lot of mechanism, there isn't a lot of standardization, and people are still stamping them with their feet sometimes, right? So keep that in mind for a second. Come on, there we go. Okay, so who produces the most grapes, or rather wine, right? So I actually found this kind of interesting. Italy is, obviously somebody's been making wine for a long time. Romans traded wine as far back in the history as a couple hundred BC, and they established big trading routes throughout Mediterranean, right? So France, everybody knows how great French wine, but look at the decrease in market share, right, in those things. What it really says is arable land in the U.S. is going up. So, we're not anywhere near the production that Italy, France, or Spain have. However, it's growing quite fast. What surprised me on this thing was Argentina. I didn't realize they had so much wine in production. Everybody knows about Australia. Chile was kind of an interesting thing. I was there about a year ago, and you go down, and I'm supposedly there for some business stuff, and so I find an excuse to go to the winery. Who'd have guessed? And so I go there, and I'm expecting to see all these new techniques and whatnot. So everybody's a graduate of UC Davis when I show up. So I might as well have been in my own backyard in Santa Cruz, right? So by the way, I got a small Pinot vineyard in Santa Cruz that I've had for about 15 years. But it started with 25 vines when I lived in Los Gatos doing Merlots. So I've been kind of plunking around on this thing for a while. South Africa, great wine producing place. Interesting enough, Germany doesn't have near as much as I thought. Portugal doesn't have as much as I thought. New Zealand almost doesn't count. Okay, where's everything in the U.S.? Well, 88.8% of the wine produced in the U.S. is produced in California. Probably 95% of it's produced between California and Washington. And I think, at least for this part of the room, I think everybody would agree that the West Coast is probably the best place to buy wine or have wine. I've tasted ice wine from Niagara Falls, though, which was kind of interesting. In upstate New York, they're a little Mogan David, for those people that remember that, the 32 cents a quart when I was a kid in college. Night train, put it in a brown bag, please, so the cops won't give me a ticket. And so what's really funny, though, is look where the other little dots are, like the middle of Texas. That's like Dallas, right? That's sort of, so somebody's producing wine in the middle of Texas. I don't see how that happens. And North Dakota and stuff. So the thing about grapes is that, they're pretty hardy plants. I mean, we make a big deal about it, and everybody worries about them being robust and stuff, but they're basically a weed, right? I mean, you can't, it's really tough to kill them because they sink really deep roots. So even like this year, this year was a pretty bad drought year out here. And so actually my grapes did well. We harvested early. September 1st is pretty early harvest. Everybody did. The yields are high all across the California. I'll probably keep my conversation around California because that's what I know best. So, grapes are pretty hardy plants. So just keep that in mind. I imagine there's some grapes that have grown further north than this, but, with climate change, heck, they'll be growing grapes up in Alaska. Let's look at California real quick, right? So California is the map on the left. Usually we think of grape production areas as being coastal Appalachians. And they grow grapes all the way down to Temecula, which is on San Diego County, on the bottom, even down in Baja. But mostly we think of grape production as happening between Santa Barbara and Mendocino County is probably as far north, Then to the east, Napa, of course, is number 4. And then as you get out to the Sierras, along the foothills, you see some wine production. But you'll see District 13, that big purple thing, right? District 13 is right next to District 11. So District 11, I'll give you an idea. So I grow Pinot grapes. So I got about 2,500 a ton this year, to give you an idea. Guys that are just south of me down in Monterey by Gonzales, they got 5,000 a ton. And then if you look at the grapes, District 11 or District 13, they'll be down around 500 a ton. So that's going to be important a little later in the discussion. By contrast, the yield for Chardonnay, I got 3 times the yield on the same acreage when I grew Chardonnay grapes. I only got $300 a ton. So some of the more expensive grapes are Pinot grapes, and I know a little bit more about that. So that's what I grow. So I can talk a little bit about that in some expertise. But keep in mind that grapes are the core of a good wine, and the best grapes in California grow in the coastal Appalachia. By contrast, the acre in District 13 costs you $200 an acre. Acre in District 7 or 6, where I am, costs you $50,000 an acre. So the dirt makes a big difference, and where the dirt is. Okay. All right. So let's talk about making wine, right? There's an old story. How do you build a nice small winery? How do you create a small fortune winery? Well, you start with a large one. You spend a lot of money and don't make any money. I've never made money. I mean, I might as well call this landscaping, right? So if you look at it, the bottle, the corks, the label cost about 4% of a $20. That's about right, on the average for some production. And we'll get into what corks and stuff costs. The grape juice itself, the production of that, about 7%. The bottle or the winemaker charge you about 9%. And the wine shipping and distribution is where over 50% of the costs are. So one of the reasons everybody has a tasting room, it's the only way they make money. See, because they got that 5% profit for the winery, right? So if you can sell, see, that's sitting about, I don't know, $10 or so. So if you can take the same wine you're producing and selling to restaurants and retail outlets and selling it in a winery, a tasting room, you made $10 profit. So you doubled your profit. So that's why everybody loves having the tour bus show up in front of your winery, right? As my winery is pretty small, pretty hard to get to. You probably the tour bus is probably going to have to be a donkey or something to get to my place. But more on this later. Okay, talk about standardization IP, right? Every varietal has its own bottle, and there's variety in the bottles. Like if you look at, like let's use the Pinot one, right? The typical Pinot. So if you have unfiltered wine that has a little divot in the bottom of the bottle, so that all the crud, kind of goes down around the side. And so, it's depending on who your winemaker is, he insists on having that kind of bottle or another bottle, right? And so I can tell you, I buy my bottles from China, and they cost me $2 each. So remember that $20? I'm spending $2 on a darn bottle from China, okay? So could use some standardization. Corks. That thing on the left there, that old man with that bark, those are cork trees in Portugal and Spain. I frankly don't know how they managed to keep those trees alive, right? But that cork comes off, and you have that cork up in the right-hand corner. Now, I've tried corks, I've tried plastic corks, and I've tried screw-on corks. No one will buy screw-on corks. So there's this perception of quality. I actually believe the wine, it's alive, it has to breathe. That's my opinion. I think I'm right. And so having a airtight cork's not a great idea. The plastic ones are the worst. The best ones are the Spanish corks, right? Now, one of the screw-on caps cost me about $1. The plastic ones cost me about 90 cents, and the cork ones cost me $2. So, okay, so $2 plus $2, I got $4, and I haven't even done the wine yet. Okay, so, all right, here, it was kind of a challenge to come up with a standardization thing, where standardization helps, right? So I came up with $2 Chuck, you know, Charles Schwab. Yeah, different buck. Charles Shaw, right? You know, we used to have a guy named Chuck Shaw that worked here at Cadence for a long time, one of the early guys. So $2 Chuck Shaw wine. It was introduced, I don't know, whatever it says, 10 years ago, and it came in at $1.99, right? And I'll be honest, man. I said, come on, $2 wine. You know, what's it got to be? Is it weed killer? you know. I mean, because like I'm just thinking what it cost me. So if you look at what a $40 bottle of wine through the winery that does my stuff, I probably have $12 in it, right? And so this guy's selling wine at retail for $2. So he's probably producing that stuff for $1. I think it's gone up to $3.99, but nevertheless, $3.99. So he's producing for $2, right? So look at the bottles. They're all the same size. They're all the same bottle. Standardization or reuse. Now I'm trying to, make the analogy, so bear with me for a minute. And so same cork, same winery, same label. The labels don't change. Same vineyard, we'll talk about that. Same distribution channel. Only one retail outlet, Trader Joe's. And I spelled that wrong. Trader Jose's. What's the catch? Well, first, the face of innovation. Fred Franzi. No, so there's the Italians in California were growing grapes here, in the 1800s. If you look at San Jose and the surrounding mountains, these things were covered with grapes, and then Prohibition hit in 1928, I think, and it prevented people from selling wine. And so these guys all switched their vineyards to prunes, actually, and apricots. So this became the prune and apricot capital of the world. But a lot of the Italian families moved into the Central Valley because the real estate was cheaper, and in the middle of Prohibition, it was a place they could start their farms. Most of these guys come from Genoa. Most of the Italian immigrants in those days came from them. Fishing families, if you know the history of fishing in Santa Cruz and San Francisco, they're from Genoa. Typically, the boats they used were Genoan-based fishing boats, but a lot of them went to San Joaquin Valley. San Joaquin Valley, by the way, is just south of Stockton, kind of east of here, directly east of San Jose. And so he started off by just, doing thousands of acres, doing the cheapest land possible, and then making it as mechanized as possible. So those barrels are made here. They're American oak barrels. They cost $1.99 each. So the barrels I use that my winemaker insists that I have cost me 800 euros, right? They're made out of French oak because somehow that makes a difference. And, I got to do a wire transfer from Scotts Valley, California to someplace in France for 800 euros, try to get that done in an hour. So he's buying these oak barrels, and he's got racks and racks of these things, and he spends $1.99 or $199 on those. So he had portable toilets for his workers, and he was not satisfied with the contract, so he started doing his own portable toilets. That's what this guy's all about. Man, everything he can, he creates a vertical solution to. Okay, so the first thing he did, well, what's the main reason why wines are cheap? There's too many wineries and not enough people to drink them. It just blows my mind every time I drive down 101 to like Paso Robles, for example. And I just look at those cultivated vineyards and I just go, who the hell's buying all this stuff, right? But nevertheless, everybody continues to plant grapes. And so if you look at Chuck Shaw, that vineyard on the right is one of his on the eastern side of the valley near Ceres or Modesto. So one row of his winery is 3 miles long, 3 miles straight. One row of my winery or vineyard is, I think, is like 300 feet. And it's on a slope like this, right? That no one will even use the tractor on because everybody's scared to death that we're going to flip a tractor, which I did last year. And so yeah, it's kind of scary. And so, but you got these straight, long rows that you can just run your tractor down, right? He probably has problems with guys falling asleep. Okay, back to District 11, District 13. Look, San Joaquin Valley, full of salt, right? Not very big organics. Oh, now I'm talking about Dennis's hometown. Sorry, man. You set me straight on this one. Hotter than hell, right? Water comes from all irrigated, and when you over-irrigate, you get more salts and stuff. It was at one point, the Central Valley, California was this huge Serengeti-like place, right? So you'd have these big floods in the spring, it'd overflow, and the salt would rise up to the edge of the valley and dry out there, right? So that's where those grapes are being grown. That's why it's $200 an acre. Vineyards are real long, straight, run north-south so you get the maximum sun exposure. Protons matter in grape production, right? You want a lot of sun. And look, there's no way I can handpick my vineyard. Most Pinot vineyards are on the order of about 7 acres because it's pretty small. There isn't that much arable flat land in California coastal regions, right? Or Washington for that matter, or Oregon. And so that says you have pretty low crop yields, right? Total crop is pretty small, yields are pretty high. But it's because you can't find flat spots. So he's got that blue thing there. That looks like something from hell as far as I'm concerned. And that thing's going to rip off everything that even looks like a grape. So what is true is when you pick by hand, and you get stuff. You get some stuff that's turned into raisin. You may get some bugs. You may get some stuff that looks like that grape bunch on the bottom there. It's got a little mold on it. But when you pick, you do it by hand, and so you throw stuff away, right? You're just constantly throwing stuff away because you want to sort it before you get to the crusher. And and there's things that live in there, right? Run into snakes occasionally, lots of mice, rats, gophers, birds. So that blue thing doesn't distinguish between any of those things. So he's getting a little more organic matter than the hand-picked ones. Now, how that affects taste is a different thing. So he has no ripe. So he's got ripe. He's everything that looks like a grape is getting yield. So he's getting huge yield, huge tonnages out of his acreage. Okay. Now, everything that I've had years, like I told you I picked on September 1st this year. I've picked as late as almost Thanksgiving sometimes, right? You get those years where the stuff just never gets ripe, and you wait and you wait and wait, and then you get this overripe fruit. So you take that fruit, you crush it, and then you're putting everything you can in. You try to do blends and stuff to kind of mellow out the wine and make it, palatable. Right? And you work on it, and you have winemakers that try to work their magic. But again, it's about the grape. It's about the grape in terms of the quality of the wine. And that wine, Lisa and I were talking about, I had 200 cases of it for about 10 years because no one would take it. So I should have sold it to this guy. Okay, next one. Let's see okay, lessons, right? Hey, grape growing is pretty hard. It's been viewed as a handcrafted thing, a lot like semiconductor design. But, there's plenty of opportunities. That sort of doesn't allow every human to do it, right? What's key, everybody talks about the decline in ASIC starts, for example, right? So we got the Internet of Things, and this is way oversimplifying things. But there's going to be gazillions of designs. So what are they going to share? They're going to share, there's more in common than different, and the difference will be done in software. So the notion of design is held in the hands of, 5 or 6 genius architects. That's going to be a thing of the past in not so many years. And we're going to have to rely on interoperability of IP, and tools have been there for a long time, but IP especially to help us with that. But you got to be kind of careful, because this is an opportunity for somebody. There will be a maverick. Remember that face of Fred? I had a Jabba the Hutt face, that looked just like Fred. And I was going to put it in there and see if I could fool you guys. But just imagine Jabba the Hutt now. So every once in a while, you'll come across a guy, didn't go to Stanford, grew up in Modesto, and figured out how to make a $2 wine that is the #1 retail wine in the world, more than Gallo, which is a huge thing. For another sidebar, Gallo loses more in evaporation a day than I make in a year. So that gives you, it's huge, man. They call it evaporation. And so there's going to be a maverick out there that figures out how to use this interoperability in terms of IP, build a platform probably for some IoT thing, and will be the, kind of like ARM is ubiquitous in terms of being the microcontroller architecture. There will be a guy that has an architecture that is ubiquitous for doing design. So watch out. As I sit here today, some 20 years, I got to think about this, 25 years after Verilog International started, there will be a change in this happen, probably in my lifetime. So thank you for letting me speak today. I appreciate it. Hopefully this wasn't as boring as the railroad thing.